VLR.
If spending money like water was the answer to our country's problems, we would have no problems now.
You're listening to the Modern Comment Show with your host, Amy Curtis, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the Modern Comments Radio Show on Vigilant Liberty Radio. I am Amy Curtis, your host. Welcome back and Happy New Year. This is my first live show of 2015, so I'm very excited to be back live with you here on VLR. And we have a lot that we are going to talk about this evening, but before we do that, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you want to get involved with the program and you're listening, you can go to vigilantlibertyradio.us/chat, pick a nickname, log into the chat room and join us there. Or you can tweet me on Twitter at Modern Comments, and I'll have my notifications page up. And I will do my best to work your tweets and comments into the show. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the program my guest this evening, who has been on my show before. And it's wonderful to have her back. That is Laura Fio, who you can find on Twitter at Laura K. Fio. Good evening, Laura. How are you?
Hi, I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Good. How were your holidays?
Uneventful, which was, well, I say that. My son had appendicitis, but it was the dreamiest appendicitis trip that you could ever imagine. So I really don't even, it was just kind of a blip. It was great.
Oh, so that's good. That's good because my other guest this evening, who's become a regular here on the Modern Comments Radio Show, that's Dave.
Good evening.
And he knows all about appendicitis. So when you said that your son had a bout of it, he kind of winced in the corner. I'm sure you maybe heard him. So thanks for joining me again, obviously, this evening, Dave.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least is my producer, Taylor, who you can find on Twitter at iDesertBlog, EYE Desert Blog. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
You know, I love the fact that after yesterday's speaker vote, people were calling Trey Gowdy a traitor. They were calling Mia Love a traitor. After, 3 weeks ago, singing their praises?
Yeah. How quickly the political winds shift. And Congress hasn't even started doing anything, although there was something that came across my feed that I read, but I didn't get too deep into the woods on because it wasn't something I was planning on talking about. But one of the first bills that the Senate looks like they're introducing is one to change the provision in Obamacare from 30 hours a week to 40 hours a week as what they define as full-time work. And I think that's going to be an interesting battle because from what I read, the White House said they're going to veto it. And everybody who pays attention knows that after the mandate went into effect that any employee who worked more than 30 hours was considered full-time and therefore subject to either health insurance paid by the employer or the Obamacare penalties or some amalgamation thereof, many employers decided they were going to turn their employees into part-time employees and give them 29 hours a week or something under that 30-hour threshold. And in my Twitter feed, somebody pointed out that the reason if somebody in the chat room or somebody on Twitter who's listening can make sense of this, please do, because it doesn't make any sense to me. But what I was told was the reason behind the 30-hour-a-week full-time equivalency was the people who wrote this bill, in some world in their little head, believe that employers wouldn't cut employee hours down by 11 hours to get under that threshold. Why and how they believed that is beyond me. because it shows what a little grasp of business that they have, and how they forget that the purpose of a business is to make money, and that money goes into growing the business and paying the employees. And they operate under this assumption, I think, that because a business is making money, they have tons of money laying around, and therefore can afford to absorb the cost of things like the mandates in the Obamacare law. So I can't even get my head around what sort of thinking went into that, and what the logic behind that was. I don't understand it, and I think this bill, if the GOP and people who are sponsoring it sell it correctly, will be wildly popular. And he did it with the Keystone Pipeline. He's doing it with this. I think everything that comes from the White House is going to be veto, veto, veto. It doesn't matter what the bill is. It doesn't matter how popular the bill is. The White House, because it's a Republican-controlled Congress now, is just going to veto everything and then try to blame the stalemate in Washington on the fact that the GOP House and Senate aren't doing the things Obama wants them to do. And I think what they need to do, if they are smart, and that's, if, emphasis on if, they need to pass the bills that are going to be popular. Keystone, this Obamacare bill. I'd like to see them try a full Obamacare repeal. We'll see if that ever happens. That might be pie in the sky this early on in the new congressional term. But I want them to pass these bills, and I want them to make Obama veto them, and then I want them to tie Obama's veto and obstructionism to every Democrat who is going to run for office in 2016, including whoever the presidential candidate may be.
Have you been talking to Liz Harrison out of curiosity, Amy?
Not recently. Do I sound like Liz?
Yes.
Well, that's awesome, because great minds think alike, because you have to play hardball. This is not the Little League. This is not, to steal a term that our White House likes to use, the JV squad. This is the time when you put up or shut up.
The Republicans can't afford to go the way the conservatives in UK or Canada. They have to grow up here and keep it.
Well, there's that, but they were elected, and I know that, the Vox-splainers of the world are trying to diminish the victory because they didn't get as many votes as the Democrats have in previous elections. But if you look at a map of where...
stupid column.
Are you talking about the Senate one? To abolish the Senate one? Yeah, well, that is part of it. But the argument has been, well, 2/3 of the nation didn't vote for the Republicans, or the Democrats still got more votes in previous elections. Therefore, the fact that the Republicans won in 2014 means nothing. That is a bunch of BS. The number escapes me off the top of my head, but several states, a majority of states, have not only the governorship, but their legislative bodies are Republican. If you look at an electoral map, there is a lot of red on that map. The Republicans were voted in because people were dissatisfied with what the Democrats were doing. It would be monumentally stupid of them to squander this opportunity by shrinking back in the face of Obama's veto threats. They need to play hardball, and they need to play, I guess in a word, if I had to choose a word, it would be dirty, and not back down and do these things, and make sure that every Democrat who is associated with Obama who runs for office is tied to the fact that Obama has vetoed these bills, which would be popular.
And realize that they're going to get blamed no matter what they do.
Yeah, they have to stop worrying about what the media says, about what the... Because you go to D.C., and D.C. is a solidly blue area. That area will always be blue. And I think when you go to a solidly blue area, and I know it happens sometimes here because I live in Milwaukee County, I live in the city of Milwaukee proper, which is a blue area. It's the heaviest blue area in the state next to Madison. After a while, you get kind of inundated, and you think, oh, well, I'm the only conservative in the city of Milwaukee, and it's rationally, I know it's not true, but that sort of environment can have an effect on you. I think it does on Republicans who are in D.C., who see all these liberals around them, the media doesn't like them, and they try to figure out a way to be liked, and they end up basically giving their constituents the back of their hand because they were elected to do certain things, and then in the face of challenge, they back down. So enough of my rant on that. I want to see this bill pass, and I want to see the Obamacare law repealed, but it would be a nice step to get people back to work, because I'm sure the 11 extra hours that people would get if the full-time rule was changed back to 40 hours, which is full-time in America, I think it would help people tremendously and put people back to work. People who have lost 11 hours. I can't speak for everybody in the audience, but I can tell you right now, if I lost 11 hours a week of my pay, financially it would be devastating for our family. So that needs to change, because the focus needs to be on helping the American people, and if the Obama administration is going to veto this bill, we need to point out the fact that he doesn't want to help you get back to your full-time job because his ideology is getting in the way. I'm going to throw this open because I know we're 11 minutes into the program and pretty much nobody else has said a word because I've been kind of ranting here for a second. So, Laura, do you have any thoughts on this?
You know, and we're going to talk about this later, but in France, they have the 35-hour work week, because the idea was that if you only allow everybody to work 35 hours, that the businesses will be required, they'll feel compelled to hire more people. And what they found was pretty much that didn't happen. Basically, they hired the same amount of people, and everybody had to work more. And they had to cram it all in 35 hours. And so businesses slowed down, and because they couldn't do things, you know, if your employee can only work 35 hours a week, but you can't afford to hire more people, or you're using those profits to do something else, because already having a small business in France is hard enough. The idea of toying with hours of work and using that as a basis for anything, I find ridiculous. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay. Taylor, you kind of chimed in there. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I think that it's amusing that the same people who put in this 30-hour, threshold, thinking that, it'll work for everyone, are the same people who want to raise the minimum wage, thinking that it's not going to lead to more people or less people doing more work and more turning industrialization and more, you get your soda by going to the nice little, machine, putting in $1 or whatever. It gives you a cup, and then you get to pick your soda, or the same thing for your hamburger, or the same thing for your comic book. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's absolutely ridiculous. But, we're the ones who just hate, we hate the work.
Yeah, we don't want. Yeah, we hate the workers. We don't want people to earn money. We've all heard those. We all heard those points before. And Amanda McAllister, who does the Edge of Anarchy on Monday nights here, is in the chat room, and she says, "We love Amy rants. Thank you very much. That was very cathartic, because it has been kind of a long day."
I hear a lot of them.
Yes, poor Stately Dave hears a lot of my rants. But one day when we have more time on the program, I will talk about how he is responsible for turning me into the conservative, quote-unquote, monster, as he calls it, that I am today.
I don't know. I
Nice.
kind of want to hear this now. Laura, do you want to hear this now or not?
Sure, why not?
Okay, well, all right. Well, when he met me, I was still in college. There is a bit of an age difference between Dave and I. I will be 32 on the 22nd of this month, and he will be 46.
Oh my gosh, you're a baby.
And he will be 46. In my head, I still feel like I'm 18, so to say I'm 32 is kind of like, oh, wow. Because in my head, I still feel like I'm 18. But Dave will be 46 in October. So I was in college, and I was, rah-rah for John Kerry, and Republicans suck, and they're going to control my body, and pretty much every stereotypical feminist, progressive trope I believed. And
can I interrupt you for a second, Amy?
Sure.
Amy, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio, we don't call them progressives. We call them leftists.
Leftists. Well, leftist trope, I believed. And I was not as bad of a leftist as some that you may encounter on Twitter, but I easily, and honest to goodness, I easily could have seen myself becoming in the vein of and it makes me want to vomit to say this, Amanda